Hi, I'm Jana Nakhad. I'm an activist and a political organizer, and I'm in the stream.
Hi, I'm Malika Bilal. Femi has the day off. On August 8th, voters in Kenya will head to the polls to vote in a general election. And there are a number of women candidates hoping to gain power and shake up the country's political landscape in the process. Kenya's parliament has fewer female MPs than most other countries in East Africa. Roughly 20% of the seats are held by women. That's despite a 2010 constitutional mandate requiring at least a third be filled by them. So what will it take to make sure more women have a seat at the table? Well, here to discuss that from Nairobi, Esther Pasaris. She's a candidate for Nairobi's women representative seat. Samantha Maina, she's a first-time candidate who's running for a seat with the Nairobi County Assembly. Daisy Amdani, the executive director of Kron Trust, that's an organization focusing on women's empowerment, governance, and community development. And Brenda Wambui, she's the CEO and founder of Brainstorm Africa. That's an online media organization dedicated to encouraging critical thought in Kenya and Africa at large. Welcome everyone to the stream. So excited to have you here. I want to start with a personal story from a member of our community. This is via Twitter. Shia of Sheba writes in, "This is how the Kenyan political environment is for women." So she shares what happens to her. "Someone once told me, you're a young woman in politics. I hope you're ready for the sexual advances because political prostitution is a way of thriving." Brenda, she ends this tweet with shaking my expletive head. So clearly she knows she's frustrated, but based on other tweets we're seeing, she's not alone. Brenda, what is the landscape like?
I think that women in politics, at least women who want to make it in politics, have to put up with a lot of misogyny to get to where they want to be. So first of all, getting nominated is a problem. Being a member of a political party, you're going to have to put up with the advances that she has shared. And then say you make it past the nomination hurdle. When you go to campaign, you're going to be harassed by the people that you want to represent. They're going to bother you and ask you why you're wearing a skirt, for example, and tell you that it's possible that, you might be raped because of the way you're dressed. They tend to stone women's entourages. They tend to ask women to do things that they generally wouldn't ask male candidates to do. And even then, once you get into power, you need more security. People are always trying to get you down. People are always trying to start a scandal. I really think it's a really hard environment for women to operate in.
And it looks like along every step of the way, I could see our guests and they all sort of smiled or cringed in acknowledgement of that. I want to share another tweet, and Brenda, what you said is really represented here. This is a tweet we got from Flo Naijo and Esther. "I think this person is referencing an incident that happened to you." So they say, "We had an incident on live TV where a candidate for Nairobi's governorship sexually harassed a fellow lady candidate in a live show." Esther, I wanted to show a little clip of that for our audience. And I will say, just watching it really, it made my blood boil. And so I can only imagine the effect it has on you. But we're showing it because we wanted to give our audience just a little taste of what it's like for women like you. So have a look.
She emerged from nowhere that she Mama Supu. She's selling beauty. She thinks beauty gives you credibility and integrity to go for leadership. Esther Pasaris is nothing but a flower girl. You announced to the gathering that after Raila is inaugurated, you will take 30 days sex holiday in Seychelles. Woman
sex holiday
who has absolutely no integrity, a socialite bimbo whose only claim to fame is because she is looking for billionaire sponsors. Yesterday, it was...
Esther.
Wow. Take me back to memory lane. Okay. First of all, I want all the viewers to understand that that character who is running for governor in the city of Nairobi is not a reflection of the men that we have in our city. He's actually appalling. He has obviously no respect for women, but he also has no respect for men. He basically puts down everyone. But then I want audiences to also understand that when you're a woman, there will always go down are you married? Do you have a husband? They question the way you dress. They question your integrity. There's also a situation where, the terminology flower girls, it's always used. But for me, I want the women to understand that no matter what they say, just stay in the race and you defend your own honor by just continuing with the job that you want to get. Because for me, I just looked at him and I thought to myself, he needs prayers. He is obviously lost the plot. Insulting a woman is a way to get you off. But today, there's so many women going for governorship in Nairobi. There's so many women who are running for members of parliament. And that just tells you we've overcome the insults. You can call us what you want, but we'll go for the job.
Well, one of those women running. Go ahead there, Daisy.
Yes, I want to jump in there and say that one of the biggest problems that we face is the perception that people have of women, particularly women in politics, because the narrative that has been shaped around men, around leadership and issues of governance is a relationship between men and the people and not women. Women have been socialized to believe that good women, and good, I say that in quotes, shouldn't aspire to leadership, and therefore the women who do aspire to leadership are considered somewhat wayward, and therefore some people feel justified, making such remarks about women candidates or women who aspire to leadership. They're not good women. They're women who enter into what is perceived to be a male. It is male dominated, but it's male reserved arena, and therefore the women who do that are either sleeping their way up the ladder so that women's political agency is not recognized as legitimate in being able to contribute towards leadership and governance, which is something that we need to address. And that's why the Constitution of Kenya 2010, even in enshrining the concept of inclusivity, recognizing that over half of the population is women, and you cannot actually advance as a country if you have left half of your population behind. We must have the voices of women and their perspectives brought to bear on leadership and decision making. So the more women we have, the Esthers and the Wambois, putting themselves out there as leaders,
right,
and we continue to push for the necessary legislation, we begin to reshape those perspectives and
right,
and create a new narrative around
so
women
Daisy,
and leadership.
one of those that you mentioned, Esther, you mentioned Brenda. Another one of them is one we saw some pictures rolling as you were talking, and that is Samantha. Samantha, you are running currently for member of county assembly. What is it that inspired you to run for office?
It was sheer frustration and the fact that I wasn't able to access the current MCA. And one of his roles, or one of the roles of being an MCA, is representation. So if I cannot access you, then there's a big problem. So it was because I needed a certain pothole fixed where I live, and the fact that I didn't have street lights where I live, and that's within Kilalashwa. So that just made me mad. And instead of complaining about it, I just decided to, be the change I want to see. So that's why it was sheer frustration.
So potholes, streetlights, your basic local issues that someone might face. And yet, in the midst of that, I know you go door-to-door campaigning. Here's one of the things that you were told. I pulled this from a BuzzFeed article. Can you be trusted with responsibility when you can't run a home? Things a Kenyan politician was asked. Of course, that Kenyan aspiring politician was you. And one of the responses we got from our community was, oh my God, absolutely no, she can't be trusted. So what kinds of things do people tell you, and how does that make you feel?
It's a non-issue. Whether I'm married or not, I'm qualified to run for this office, right? So those are just some of the things that you can see. Even the person that commented was a man, So, I get such responses like, how can you not be married and run a home and want to be trusted with a public office? To being, you're 26, why don't you give it another 5 years? You'll be prepared, you'll be ready. Those are just some of the reactions I've gotten on the ground. But I'm still pushing through, and I want to prove them wrong when elected to the MCA.
So all of this, of course, is despite a Kenyan high court ruling. This is a tweet we got from someone explaining that. We mentioned it at the top of the show. This is Niokabi, who says, in Petition 371 of 2016, Justice Mativo ordered Parliament to enact the two-third legislation within 60 days or risk dissolution. So that's legislation that would make it obligatory to have more female lawmakers or face dissolution, but that deadline came and it passed. Daisy, what happened? Why do we not have that two-thirds that we're supposed to have?
Well, because we don't have the necessary political will to implement it. And I think, that's one of the issues that I think we keep trying to tell everyone is that it's a constitutional imperative. We were the petitioners in that case. And mind you, the National Assembly has actually appealed that judgment, that particular judgment. We're actually in court once again, having, to defend the judgment. The National Assembly is saying that, they think it's unreasonable. But the reality is that this is a constitutional requirement. It's not about women. It's not about, whether women want to or not. It is that the Constitution requires that the legislation be put in place. And right now, what we're being faced with is the possibility of a constitutional crisis post-election, because no matter what we do, even if we were to vote in every single woman who is currently on the ballot, we will not meet the two-third gender requirement, which means then that Parliament is not constitutionally constituted and therefore cannot transact business as an illegally constituted house. And that will be challenged. And the reality is that even right now, as we face elections, there is already an economic downturn. And you wonder the irresponsibility of the leadership, that they pick and choose what aspects of the Constitution they want to abide by simply because it affects women more than it affects everybody else. And people have looked at it more as a women's issue, not as a constitutional issue, not as a rule of law issue. And they don't see the impunity being displayed by the leadership by their simply refusing to implement the law.
So as you're talking, I see Samantha nodding, I see Brenda nodding. Brenda, what are you thinking?
I really like what all the ladies have said, because first of all, Esther stated that Miguna does not represent the views of the men of Nairobi or of the country. But I beg to differ, because I think he just has the courage or the nerve to say this publicly. And think about it, the current government has a majority in both houses. How is it that they have been unable to pass this law? How is it that they have been unable? If there was political goodwill, as Daisy stated, this would have been done a long time ago. So we've been operating since they came into power unconstitutionally, as she says. And I feel like because these people represent the views on the ground, and this is why when Esther, for example, when Samantha, for example, go to campaign, they meet these very misogynistic, dismissive attitudes on the ground. And they are expected, because as Daisy said, this space, the public space, not just the political space, is more or less treated as a space for men in this country. So when they go out there, it's like they're being done a favor, which is why they're asked, when, for example, Samantha is taking a photo with people who live in her ward, they want to touch her inappropriately because, they're doing her a favor by giving her their time. So I feel like these attitudes are very pervasive, and you see it when elders, for example, from the different ethnic communities in Kenya gather and they declare these are the men or the people that we are supporting. And then when women run, they are told that they are being, immoral or irresponsible. These attitudes are very pervasive. I think they reflect the situation on the ground. Yeah.
I wanted to give a little bit of context. Daisy, I hear you, and Esther, I hear you, but I wanted to give our audience just a little bit of context to look at the landscape of this in the global scale. This is a comparison of women's representation in East Africa. So as we mentioned, Kenya, of course, has the lowest rates in East Africa, with 21%. So you have Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, all having more. But in the global landscape, they're on par with the US, 19.6%. So it's not necessarily that uncharacteristic, which is not, of course, a good thing. But Esther, do you think there could be an argument that 7 years is just not enough time to implement what the Supreme Court, what the High Court wanted?
You know what? I mean, at the end of the day, I think Kenya has really progressed in the sense that we've actually got it in our constitution that not more than 2/3 of one gender. So it's there. Unfortunately, women have not been empowered financially so that they can actually go for these positions, and they're doing it on their own. Political parties have still not been able to field women, and women have not really come forward. As Daisy said, even if all the women were elected, we still will not get the numbers right. So I think right now, in this current election, we've got at least 4 or 5 women running for governor. In the last election, we only had 2 deputy governors. So I say that women are taking the strides on their own. The current government, unfortunately, was not actually able to whip people to ensure that the gender bill was met. The courts have given their ruling. Again, elections come every 5 years. It's an opportunity for the women to actually vote out the current government and actually bring in the other government that actually wants to do something for women empowerment. I think we've recognized that if a woman comes in through nomination, she can't perform because she has no budget. So when she comes in through election, she's able to do a lot more.
So Esther, Daisy has a response to that. Daisy,
Malika, I want to come in there. First of all, I don't think we can compare ourselves to America because America doesn't have it enshrined in the supreme law of the land. The Constitution of Kenya is the supreme law of the land, and it demands that legislation must be put in place. So the lack of legislation is actually an act of unconstitutionalism and lack of adherence to the rule of law. It is not the responsibility of women. It is the responsibility of the duty bearers, the president, the executive, to ensure that this legislation is put in place. While I agree that women need to step up, women have been stepping up for a long time. We've had women active in the political arena. But because one of the biggest barriers has been the lack of the necessary legislation to actually facilitate women's participation, and it is manifested at the highest level. When you have at the level where the president simply has to appoint cabinet ministers and he doesn't adhere to that rule, he is sending a message very loud and clear to the nation. One, that the Constitution is not to be obeyed. Two, that women are optional. You know, having women as decision makers in that position in his cabinet is an option that he would rather not take. But the other thing is that because there is no political cost to shortchanging women, the political leadership continues with the platitudes because both the current government and the opposition, the entire parliament, have conspired together to deny this legislation. It has been a joint effort, and when it comes to that, they have no party lines, they have no tribal lines, they are united in their subjugation of women. When you look at the political parties, none of them have any kind of mechanism to facilitate the women's the women's participation in
so
the political landscape.
I'm glad that you raised that. I'm glad you raised that, Daisy, because we actually got a comment from someone who talks about the lack of support on the political party level. This is Senator Joy Gwendo, and this is what she told the stream.
Why can't we support women who have come out to vie for these positions? Why can't we empower more women to go to leadership? And this support should start from party primaries. Women should be supported, even if it means just supporting them by giving them party materials or doing for them the IEC materials for campaign. This is going to help in a long way. Currently, I am vying for Member of Parliament, but I have not gotten any support from my political party. But that does not make me quit. I am going to do this for women outside there, for young girls, so that they grow up knowing that there is hope for women in leadership.
Samantha, she's doing it for young girls. And I hear you, Daisy, and I know that other people agree with you, but Samantha, do you feel like you have the support? Do you agree with her?
Well, I appreciate the current party, the party that I'm under, that's the Ukweli party. They have held my hand, especially because I'm new in the field. So my political party, which is the Ukweli party, has held my hand, has given me the training, has taught me how to fundraise. We're even a crowdfunding party. So I cannot speak of other political parties because I've not engaged with them or interacted with them. But as a Ukweli party, they have offered me support, and I truly do appreciate it.
Esther?
I think political parties, you know, like the party that I'm with has a wave. it's got a presidential candidate that could actually take on and become the 5th president of Kenya. So running with the party wave, it's good. And our party leader actually goes out and campaigns with us and tries to sell all of us. And I believe that that's good, but it's not enough. We obviously, I mean, that's a photo with me with the presidential candidate. He lets me ride with him. He lets me talk, gives me audience. He campaigns for me. And that's, half the plot, So the other half is, as women, we obviously need to get out there, and it's costly. And I really believe that as we come back, when we form the next government, the women that are going to be elected, we have the moral obligation and the duty to ensure that we create some kind of fund to nurture other women, because men are not going to do it for us. So the onus is on us as women to nurture all these young women that are coming out. I mean, I am so proud of Samantha. I think it's amazing what she's trying to do. Forget about everything that they're going to tell you about you being single. I mean, who questions a man whether he's single or whether he has 10 wives or whether he's, you are amazing. And I'm so proud of you.
I know. Thank you.
I like the support, and here's someone who I think would agree with you. This is Audrey. She says, many women can't raise funds to participate in politics, so political parties should create special funds to assist women on this. And then following up on that point, just in a way, and looking at solutions, if you could call them that. Brenda, I know that there are people who are taking matters into their own hands. Tell us about the primaries, where your grandmother lives. There's one candidate who was already booted out because women got together and they weren't happy. What happened?
Yeah, so the area in which my grandmother lives, the road there was a bit bad, and the women there asked him to fix it, and he retorted and said, why do you care about the roads and you guys don't own cars? Instead of fixing the roads, what I'm gonna do is give each one of you 300 shillings. You can go and buy yourself a nice pair of rubber shoes, and your walk will be more comfortable. So on the day of that primary, I remember my grandmother getting into a taxi and going all the way to the place where the nominations were happening to get that man out of the Jubilee Party ticket. And sure enough, like, the turnout was largely women, and he only got 69,916 votes, and that's in comparison to his competitor who got around 353,000. So that shows you what can happen when women decide, like, when you insult them as a contingent and they decide to retaliate. Women in Kenya make up 52% of the population, yet in our parliament, as you said, it's 21%. This is dismal. And it also trickles down into how they are represented when it comes to property, when it comes to education, when it comes to basically everything that happens. So we need to be able to galvanize them. And that's what I am excited, and I would hope to see Samantha and Esther do, to galvanize women as a voting contingent so that they can vote for their own benefits, so that they can require the candidates that are running to say, what are you going to do for us? And if you don't do it, best believe we will show up and we will get rid of you.
So that's one way. Here's another one. Neo Kabi writes in, the women of Kenya must actively block the swearing in of the next parliament. The rights are not given, they are taken. Another solution there. But Daisy, I know that you have a site an organization that is trying to do just this, make sure there is a block. How are you trying to make this possible?
Well, we've actually been going around the country. We don't have enough money to support too many women candidates, but we do have about 20 women candidates that we are supporting. And what we're doing is mobilizing women to support women, because one of the biggest accusations against women is that they do not support each other, and that if they were to get together, they can actually decide who becomes president. So we have conversations with these women, and that's why it's called Nimama. It's about women, and it's a women for women. And our tagline is that we shall stick together to the ballot. And it's actually, it's been quite effective. In fact, most of the women at the grassroots, every time, we go there with the campaigns, they're like, oh, where have you been? We hope that all the women that we're supporting right now will actually make it through. But we do have a plan, through to 2022, to start building women into a political capital that can actually shape the political discourse. But aside from that, one of the bigger challenges is also managing the campaign financing regimen, because that's also a big
Daisy,
problem.
I have to pause you there. I like this prescriptions for what happens next. Here's one more. Women in Kenya have been used to being taken in circles And come 8/8, it's a must for them to rise up and drain the swamp. That's all the time we have now. Thank you to our guests and our community, and good luck to those running in the election. Until next time, we'll see you online.